People told me that they like to get their news in digital formats. There is a small group that wants print, um, but the technology that folks are using for news and newsletter distribution aren't optimized for print distribution. So that's where this forced choice comes from. People feel like, oh, if we have a digital newsletter, we don't want to have to do a whole new newsletter just so that we could do a print version. And many people said they really wanted more of the news to be actually part of the actual conference website. They didn't want to have to go to a different place to get their news. They want to be able to go to the conference website and see what's going on and have the sense of energy and activity be in one place. And quite frankly, there's a problem with news happening. So news currently will go to the clergy in a particular church, and it doesn't necessarily get passed on. So there's a real bottleneck, and overworked front offices of churches or overtaxed clergy are sort of passing on stuff on a need-to-know basis, but it's what they think you need to know, not what necessarily you might be interested in, where you to get the information directly. There's a strong desire among churches for websites that do more to support outreach and growth, and congregations really want their websites to do a better job for them as well. There's some interest from leadership to use separate or individual websites for their committee work. So there's a spiritual formation committee that really wants to be doing important things to make spiritual formation information available to more people who are unchurched, people who don't have those resources. They want to make that stuff available so that if you're just out there in the middle of, the wheat fields in eastern Washington, and you have an internet connection, you can get connected to the right spiritual care type of information that you need. There's a desire for that. We don't have the system that accommodates that currently, the knowledge about how to set up websites and how to manage them and maintain them is very, very low. So that's as much of the report as I'm going to go through right now. There's a lot more information in the actual report. So there's lots and lots of recommendations. You can always count on me for some recommendations. In almost every section of the content that we've talked about, teleconferencing, speakerphones, Skype, how to do web meetings, meeting scheduling, email newsletters, non-digital communications, website development, website metrics, and video conferencing. There are specific recommended pieces of equipment and approaches and technologies that you can use. So if you want to go online and find the report, you can look up your particular issue that you're struggling with communication and it's a starting place for where you might get started. And if you want to find that report, it's at pncuccomtech at blogspot.com, and there will be a version of this presentation posted in PDF form on this annual meeting website, so you'll be able to, it's already there, thank you, Jim. PNCUCC ComTech, TECH, blogspot.com. Yes. Yes, I'm hearing a yes. There is a link. So just go ahead and advance what's next. As a result of this study, I made 3 summary recommendations, and I'll go through them quickly. You can just go through all of those. The first, go ahead and advance the slide. Establish a baseline internet access and web connectivity for all churches within the conference. Basically, from my perspective, what's needed is to get everybody up to just a base level. Every church in the conference needs to have a web presence. Every church in the conference needs to have an email address. we have to have just the bare minimum of connection so that we can begin to connect and explore our gifts to transform the world. And then it would be ideal to have a system set up so that we can aggregate news sharing, so that it's easy if one church posts a piece of news on their site, they can push that out to the conference, and other churches can download it locally if they need to, and to empower more people to submit news to the conference. The recommendation is to provide grants, training, and technical support for distance meetings. So more of the folks that need to be doing work across distances need to get support to do that. They need to be shown how to use Skype and how to use WebEx and how to even, God help them, dial into a telephone conference if they need that kind of support. And that includes these low-cost technologies that are available to us. The Skype and some of the tools that are out there are free. We just need to know what they are and learn how to use them. We also need to be supporting conference committees and task forces with online orientation and training materials. This was expressed over and over again. I need to have resources online so I'm not reinventing the wheel every year. And they also ask for live technical support for those distance meetings. So if I'm having a meeting, I can call somebody and say, how do I set this up? How do I do this going forward? These were the recommendations that were presented in November. Since that time, what we've been active in doing is doing some research to figure out how much would it cost just to fulfill these 3 recommendations. And believe me, there's lots more in the report. But these were the ones that we focused on. So we've done that. That information is in hand. And what's needed now, when I teach a workshop, oftentimes I will do the information sharing part, where I'm conveying a message, an inspirational message to people that I'm speaking to. But then I'll ask them at the end, okay, now I want you to think about what you've just heard and write down the one action step that you are going to take leaving here to put this information into practice. And so I like to think of Davita's presentation this morning, her talk, as the information sharing, the inspirational message. We know that God is calling us to utilize our gifts to what? Transform the world. To do that, we need to get connected. So we need to move as a conference to begin to create the technology that will support the connections that we need to transform the world. And so as you hear of specific opportunities to support the advancement of communication technology in the conference, I hope the action step that you will take is to get behind that and do what you can to make sure that we're all connected. All right. Do we have time for questions? Okay. All right. You can talk to me afterwards if you have questions.
Can you do that, John? Put the website, the Blogspot address up. So I would encourage you, if you have questions, to find Kathleen. Also, as part of the implementation process of this, which the Board of Directors has already started working on, we're looking at having Kathleen do a similar version of this presentation, but with more time for conversation on the west side and also on the east side of the state. So we would love to have you, when you see that come up, attend, find people in your congregation to attend, so that we can work on continuing along with this process. The conversation that's happening right now in the Board of Directors, along with stewardship and other groups, is looking at some implementation suggestions that Kathleen gave to us, and a lot of stuff comes down to money. So we're looking at how we could pull together a plan to find the money to implement a lot of what you've seen. So thank you, Kathleen, for sharing that with us. I would like to invite forward, who do we have next? Susan, to take us through the final report on the nomination slate, and then we will vote on it.
Okay. I had a couple of corrections. In addition to what's listed in front of you, David McGee from Plymouth will also be serving on the annual meeting planning committee. And then on the annual meeting planning committee, Ms. Esther Pfeiffer should be Reverend Esther Pfeiffer, so I apologize for that. And underneath Adult Spiritual Formation Task Force, Linda Lee Purdy should also be Reverend Linda Lee Purdy. Did anyone else have any other additions? Again, from Ministry Resources, thank you. Our committee has worked pretty hard to put this slate in front of you. And we appreciate everyone who said yes and those who prayerfully considered and said no. And if you have a need or a desire to serve in the future, please seek one of us out.
So I would entertain a motion that we would accept the slate as we have seen it with the amendments. All right, and because it comes to us from a committee, we don't need a second for that. Is there any discussion? All in favor signify aye by raising up your voting card in the air. Aye. Arr. Okay, we'll start getting into the pirate noises in a minute. It is fun, I admit. Are there any opposed? I see no opposition. Anybody abstaining? All right, the IRs have it. Thank you. As Brandon approaches the time that he does this job, he's becoming giddy, which is really entertaining to watch from right here.